Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well and you survived Los Angeles's first tropical storm. Um, didn't seem to be that bad at all. For me, it just rained all one afternoon to the night to the morning. So, but I've been in stronger rains than that. So, but I stayed home. I didn't go out and test the flooding. So I don't know if in your area you had flooding or not. So anyway, today is hot and dry. So back to the normal. So today's lesson is scheduled for August the 24th, which you'll know is a Thursday. Okay, it'll be the 8th week of our quarter, which means the final will be coming in a few weeks. And then we get a nice little break, then start the fall quarter. So without further ado, let me do my usual steps, share the screen, go to the material, okay, slideshow, get from the beginning. Let me adjust my computer, there's not enough room for me. Okay. So again, our school code is HUM 106, which stands for Humanities. It's Lives of Extraordinary Women. Not regular women, extraordinary, even though you ladies are also extraordinary in the class. Okay. All right. So see if anybody knows of this lady. I was alive when she was around, so I have some little memories of her. So again, week 8, scheduled for August the 28th. There she is, Golda Meir. You can read Hebrew. This is her name in Hebrew. This is her March 1973. She was the 4th prime minister of Israel. Okay. To me, she looks like a regular grandmother that I've seen a few times in my life, but lady was very strong for her country. Let's see. Okay, Golda Meir, born Golda Mabovich on May 3rd, 1898. So she was born before the turn of the last century. And she died on December 8th, 1978. She was an Israeli politician who served as the 4th prime minister of Israel from 69 to 74. She was modern Israel's first and only female head of government, the first and only female head of government in the modern Middle East, and the 4th elected female head of government or state in the modern world. So they're saying the whole world there, Halsey, you know what I mean? Pretty impressive stuff, history-wise, right? She has been described as the Iron Lady. I think that was her most common nickname. You think I'll ask a question like that? What was Golda Meir's nickname on the final? Who knows? So she was known as the Golden Lady, but of Israeli politics, with a reputation for being down to earth and a persuasive speaker. So means when she spoke, people wanted or actually did the things that she asked. Born in Kiev in the Russian Empire, Meir immigrated to Wisconsin, United States. I bet a lot of people didn't know that. They're like, oh, she's just born and raised in Israel, right? No. And then you mentioned the United States, and that's a double no. So as a child with her family in 1906, she moved to Wisconsin, cheddar cheese, capital of the world. She graduated from the Milwaukee State Normal School and found work as a teacher. While in Milwaukee, she embraced the labor Zionist movement in 1921. Meir and her husband immigrated to mandatory Palestine, which is in Israel, settling in a kibbutz in Merhavia. Kibbutz is like a communal property where people live together and work together for common goals in Israel. She later became the kibbutz's representative to Histadrut, and in 1934, she was elevated to the executive committee of the trade union. She held several key roles in the Jewish agency during the Second World War. In 1946, after British authorities arrested Moshe Saret and other leaders of the Yishuv, Meir became the acting head of the political department of the Jewish agency. She was a signatory of the Israeli Declaration of Independence in 1948. Meir was elected to the Knesset in 1949 and served as labor minister until 1956, when she was appointed foreign minister by Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. She retired from the ministry in 1966 due to ill health. And just to think, she still had not become the leader of Israel yet. In 1969, Meir assumed the role of prime minister following the death of Levi Eshkol, or Levi Eshkol. Early in her tenure, she made multiple diplomatic ventures in order to promote peace in the Middle East. The outbreak of the Yom Kippur War in 1973 caught the nation off guard and inflicted several early losses on the Israelis. The resulting public anger damaged Meir's reputation and led to an inquiry into the failings of the Israeli Defense Forces. Her alignment coalition was denied a majority in the subsequent or following legislative election. She resigned the following year and was succeeded as prime minister by Yitzhak Rabin. Meir died in 1978 of lymphoma, poor thing. So she was the prime minister from 69 to 74, and only 4 years later she passed. And she was buried on Mount Herzl. Now her immigration to mandatory Palestine. Golda Meir in the fields at the kibbutz Merhavia in 1920s. So, like I said, a communal way of living in the countryside. 1921, after the conclusion of the war, the couple moved to Palestine, then part of the British Mandate, along with Meir's sister Shana, Shana's daughter, and Meir's childhood friend Regina. They sailed on the SS Pocahontas from New York to Naples, then from there to Tel Aviv by train. Meir's parents subsequently moved to Palestine in 1926, so she moved way ahead of her parents. They were eventually accepted into Kibbutz Merhavia in the Jezreel Valley after an initial rejected application. I didn't even know you could get rejected to a kibbutz. I didn't know you had to be accepted by a majority, what have you. Her duties included picking almonds, planting trees, working in the chicken coops, and running the kitchen. Recognizing her leadership abilities, the kibbutz chose her as its representative to the Histadrut, the General Federation of Labor. In 1924, the couple left the kibbutz and lived briefly in Tel Aviv before settling in Jerusalem. There they had 2 children, a son Menachem in 1924 and a daughter Sarah in 1926. Meir returned to Merhavia for a brief period in 1925. So this is 2023. So we're talking, almost 100 years ago, 98 and 99 years ago. Wow. Role in the Palestine War and establishment of Israel. On November 17th, 1947, shortly before the outbreak of the 1947 through 1949 Palestine War, Meir went with King Abdullah I of Jordan. Abdullah was seen as the only Arab leader willing to ally with a future Israeli state. Also, he opposed the Mufti of Jerusalem, which is a high-level Islamic position, and was rivals with other Arab countries. The meeting was cordial, which means friendly, and confirmed that Abdullah was uninterested in invading and quietly willing to cooperate in the future. Very interesting. Quite different from a lot of the other Arab states. First phase of war, Golda Meir and Haifa, 1947. For most of the war, Meir reluctantly played what she felt was a minor role in Israel's activities. An article published by Golda Meir Institute said she felt she was being pushed aside to a secondary arena. However, she played a critical role in fundraising. In January 1948, the Jewish Agency needed to raise funds for the continuing war in the coming Israeli state. The treasurer of the Jewish Agency was convinced that they would not be able to raise more than 7 to 8 million from the American Jewish community. Meir raised over 30 million. Wow. Quadruple, more than quadruple. Key to her success was an emotional speech she first delivered in Chicago, the 22nd of January. She toured dozens of cities in the United States and returned to Israel on March 18th. The funds were critical to the success of the war effort. They needed the money from the U.S. to help them fight the war, the Israelis, and the establishment of Israel. By comparison, the opposing Arab Higher Committee's annual budget was around 2.2 million, similar to Haganah's annual budget before the war. Ben-Gurion wrote that Meir's role as the Jewish woman who got the money, which made the state possible, would go down in history. However, upon returning home, she suffered a political setback. Uh-oh. The Jewish Agency and National Council executives excluded her from the 13-member cabinet of the Provisional Government of Israel and only included her in the 37-member People's Council. Ben-Gurion protested this, saying, "It is inconceivable that there shall be no adequate woman. It is a moral and political necessity for the issue, the Jewish world and the Arab world." At one point, he even considered offering her his spot on the cabinet. So he definitely wanted female representation. He thought it was very important, even for the Arab side. Very interesting, very different from the thinking of the day. The 13th of April, she was hospitalized in Tel Aviv due to a suspected heart attack. Ben-Gurion said the political department heads urged her to guard her health and come to Jerusalem as soon as she could. They asked her to be the mother of this city, and that her words to 100,000 residents will be a source of blessing and encouragement. Wow, that's how much influence they felt she had, that she could move the Israeli people to do what was right for the country. However, she felt it was a secondary and temporary role. Instead, on the 6th of May, She visited Haifa after its 22nd April occupation by Haganah. This trip had a significant impact on her. Therefore, she witnessed an elderly Arab woman emerging from a destroyed house, clutching or holding to her few remaining belongings. When the two women made eye contact, they burst into tears. Mayer went on to call the mass expulsion and flight of Arabs before the 1948 Palestine War dreadful and likened it to what befall the Jews in Nazi-occupied Europe. She returned to Tel Aviv and eventually to Jerusalem 2 weeks before the end of the mandate. May 10th, Mayer had a second meeting with Abdullah. She traveled to Amman in secret, which is in Jordan, disguised as an Arab woman. He proposed that Palestine be absorbed into Jordan with autonomy granted to majority Jewish areas. Golda rejected the proposal. It seemed likely that Abdullah I would invade. Well, if he didn't agree with her, she felt this guy's going to invade the country. Wow, scary deliberations there, right? You know, we can debate with China all we want about Taiwan, but China's not attempting to invade the United States. You know, crazy stuff. It would be Taiwan, but again, that would be kind of like, I guess, invading the U.S., and they haven't done that yet. Second phase of the war, an appointment to minister plenipotentiary. 14th of May, 1948, Mayer became one of 24 signatories, including 2 other women, of Israeli Declaration of Independence. She later recalled, after I signed, I cried. When I studied American history as a schoolgirl and I read about those who signed the U.S. Declaration of Independence, so she thought she was doing the same thing for her country. I couldn't imagine these were real people doing something real. Then there I was sitting down and signing a declaration of establishment. The day after independence, the second phase of the war began. Mayer also suddenly lost her job, administrative responsibilities, as the political department became the Provisional Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And her leadership role in Jerusalem was taken over by Dov Yosef. 18th of May, she embarked or started a journey on a second and even more successful fundraising tour in which she raised about 50 million. Total, her fundraising efforts raised about 90 million. Wow, for that time, around a third of the cost of the war, and the war cost 275 million. During preparations for this trip, she was issued the first Israeli passport ever. She was a first citizen. I was told by some older Korean people that in the 1970s, it was almost impossible for a regular South Korean citizen to get a passport. You have to have some kind of military or political connection, but for most people, it was almost impossible. Over the 10 weeks that she was gone, Israel was battered by war and changed the country drastically, which means not for the better. June 25th, while still in the United States, Mayer was appointed by Sharett, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, as the Minister Plenipotentiary to the Soviet Union, which recently had just recognized Israel. That's interesting, a communist country was recognizing Israel. Mayer was displeased by the offer, though. It's interesting, you kind of like wonder, you know, it was hard to think what she might like or what she might dislike. She spoke no Russian and feared being lonely in Moscow, so she didn't want to relocate there. She said, at least we have a state, and I want to be there, Israel. I don't want to go thousands of miles away. Why do I always have to go away? So she's always trying to get there and be in Tel Aviv, and they're always pushing her to other countries. Interesting. Her return to Israel was delayed due to a car crash in which she tore a ligament and fractured a bone. Soviet officials refused to believe she was in a hospital and wanted an Israeli envoy as soon as possible. Thus, she ignored doctors' orders to rest and returned to Israel on the 29th of July. Years later, her leg would frequently pain her, so that means she did not get the medical treatment that she needed. And so it did not heal correctly, if not at all, thoroughly. And she would have reoccurring pains as the years went by. She did her best to hurry back home for her country. So that is a sacrifice. Premiership, she finally gets to be the premier of the country. 1969 to 74, and there's a picture of her with children. Here's a picture of her, as we say, so Golda Meir in Tel Aviv, 1969. And then in center with Pat and President Richard Nixon in Washington, D.C., 1973. So Richard Nixon was the president at that time. I guess that's after he had gone to China to try to open up political ties with communist China. Prime Minister Levi Eshkol died suddenly on the 26th of February, 1969, leading to the appointment of Yigal Allon as the interim or intermediate prime minister in an election to replace him. Upon being informed of his death, Meir said, "Oh Gewalt," which is a Jewish term meaning "oh my God." Before the vote, most suspected that Meir would be elected. On the 7th of March, 1969, the party's Central Committee voted Meir as the new party leader. 71 years old. 71-year-old Meir had mixed feelings due to her health concerns, but eventually agreed, saying that she would honor the party's decision, just as she had honored all of the party's past decisions. Meir served as prime minister from the 17th of March, 1969 to June the 3rd, 1974. She maintained the National Unity Government formed in 1967 after the Six-Day War, in which Mapai merged with two other parties, Rafi and Adu Ha'avoda, to form the Israeli Labor Party. In 1969, on the 2-year anniversary of the war, Meir stated in an interview that there was no such thing as Palestinians, a comment later described as one of her defining and most damning or damaging legacies. 6 months after taking office, Meir led the reconfigured alignment comprising Labor and Mapam into the 1969 general election. The alignment managed what was still the best showing for a single party or faction in Israeli history, winning 56 seats. This is the only time that a party or faction has approached winning an outright majority in an election. The National Unity Government was retained. 1969 and the early 70s, Meir met with many world leaders to promote her vision of peace in the Middle East, including Richard Nixon, 1969. Nicolae Ceausescu, 1972. He was, I'm trying to get the country now from Czechoslovakia, but Eastern Europe, we'll stay with that. He was eventually assassinated. And Pope Paul VI, 1973, which is the Catholic world. In 1973, she hosted the Chancellor of West Germany, Willy Brandt, in Israel. Oh, Ceausescu was Romania, sorry. Okay, in August 1970, Meir accepted a U.S. peace initiative that called for the end of the war of attrition An Israeli pledged to withdraw to secure and recognized boundaries in the framework of a comprehensive peace settlement. The Gahal party quit the national unity government in protest, but Meir continued to lead the remaining coalition. February 28, 1973, during a visit in Washington, D.C., Meir agreed with Henry Kissinger's peace proposal based on security versus sovereignty. Israel would accept Egyptian sovereignty over all of Sinai. Well, Egypt would accept Israel presence in some of Sinai's strategic positions, like it's militarily strategic. Okay, so now into our book, and this is a drawing of her. So you see her with her basket and scrub brush. No, it's not a cell phone. This was before cell phone. Okay. So, and not dressed as a sexy woman. Excuse me, you know, just very, very conservative. So strong man or granny, right? Strong man or grandmother. The joke right there. Okay. Golda Meir, born in Kiev, Ukraine, 1898. Remember in the first part of the reading, it said the Soviet Empire. Ukraine was governed by Russia at the time. Died in Jerusalem, Israel, 1978. Prime Minister of Israel and one of the country's founders. It's indeed. Okay. Golda Meir's earliest memory of her childhood in Russia was of her father nailing boards across the doors and windows. He was preparing for what was to come. Mobs trying to break in, screaming death to Jews. So if you don't know the word mob, okay, we've just had these two attacks. We have new words now. New situations create new words in English. So we had the attack and robbery in the Glendale Americana, and then we just had the Topanga Mall. A mob is a large group of people. So we have this new word, flash mobs. That means that they show up quickly, steal quickly, and leave quickly in a flash. And it's a mob. I think they said there were 50 people at the Topanga Mall. So I'm not sure exactly what number immediately constitutes a mob, but 10's not enough. Maybe 20 is the start of a mob. I think 30 for sure, right? But there was 50 at the Topanga. Okay, so these were mobs that were Nazis trying to break in to kill the Jews. She once said that the explanation of her whole life was a desire to save other Jewish children from the terror and anger she felt. After her family moved to the United States, Meir checked out stacks of books from the Milwaukee Public Library, got good grades, and she was a good student, though report cards called her talkative. Yeah, a lot of those old teachers, they didn't like kids talking or, mumbling or whatever, because they had to pay 100% attention. But you know how kids are. Your friend sits next to you, and, hi, how are you? Or what do you have for lunch? Hey, be quiet. So this future prime minister was all the talkative, probably too talkative. And even though that happened, she thought about herself becoming a teacher. But her parents often kept her home to work in the family grocery store and were so opposed to high school that they arranged for their 14-year-old daughter to marry a much older man. So look at their thinking at the time. They're like, high school would not be a good thing for you. I don't know what their thinking was. Women shouldn't be that educated. I don't know. But it would have been, in their minds, better for her to get married at 14 to an older man. Interesting. So let's see what happened. Did she say, sure, let me do that? Sounds exciting. Before that could happen, Mayor crept out her window and journeyed by train to her married sister in Colorado. So, folks, if you don't understand what that means she ran away. She said, hell no, I don't want to get married at 14. Aren't you still in middle school at 14? So, when she disappeared to her married sister in Colorado from Wisconsin, Milwaukee, there she met Jews who believed that Jewish people had a right to a nation or country of their own. It was a seemingly impossible dream in the face of enormous odds, but starting in her teens, Mayer dedicated herself to the cause. Mayer liked to flirt. Hmm. So you always see these pictures of her as an older grandmother, so it's hard to imagine her as a young girl. And then, everybody thinks, well, a grandmother, she always looked old. That's not true. She was a young girl and she liked to flirt with boys. Wow. And her childhood best friend said that 4 out of every 5 boys we met fell in love with her. So maybe she was very beautiful. She chose Morris Meyerson, saying, he isn't very handsome, but he has a beautiful soul. So quite different than now. Girls or young women demand a handsome guy. What's the latest addition? He has to have a six-pack and he has to be rich. So I've never heard any young girls now say, "Oh, I want to marry a guy that has a beautiful soul." I used to when I was in high school, but I haven't heard that in years. Neighbors smirked that she was the husband. So smirk is a look on your face that kind of like you're making fun of and then angry at the same time. She worked while he shopped. See, so right away, she should have been shopping, right? And he working, but she worked. She cleaned. So that thing that you saw in the drawing was not a payphone or, I mean, a cell phone, but a brush for cleaning, washing. She cooked and even bought her clothes. Her happiest times were on a farm in Palestine where men and women shared the land and duties equally. So again, quite something different. You know that we'll see, living on the farm and doing things at work is not easy. So uh, again, I bet a lot of our young girls in their teens and 20s here would never, I just cannot see them thinking, yes, we can work on a farm and I don't care how dirty some of the jobs are with animals or building or whatever. I want to do my share. I really doubt it, right? But she was a different kind of woman. When she first arrived at the farm, she was even afraid of the chickens. Now, what are you going to do if you're afraid of chickens and you just move to a communal farm? Wow. But she soon was gathering eggs for everyone. She danced the hora late into every Friday night, which is Jewish music. And when she needed money, she took in laundry that she washed by hand. So look at that. Another thing I don't think young women would do nowadays. She needed money, so imagine she went to other people and said, I'll wash your dirty clothes. And if you pay me for this service, for some people, it's hard enough washing their own clothes. And you don't know how dirty some people can be. But she needed money. She saw that as a way to make extra money, and she didn't bother her doing it. Wow. Ever more single-minded about her cause, if you remember her cause from the last page, and I hope you do. Mayer separated from her husband and remained in Palestine. Now listen to this, they never divorced and they stayed friends. Was that because she was too busy to do the paperwork, or it was too hard if they lived in two different areas, or they felt because a lot of children from divorce will tell you that they were scarred by the divorce, that it hurt them so badly when they saw their parents separate. So maybe they didn't divorce for the kids. So I don't know. Knowledge lost to time. She sometimes left her children, Sarah and Menachem, with other people while she traveled. Conquering her guilt took an almost superhuman effort of will. She believed she offered her children more by staying. So interesting. I guess she wanted to travel to continue her single-minded cause for building Israel into its own country. She sacrificed time with her kids, but she believed she offered the children more by not her staying, but her staying active in the world. So, and as it says here, her greatest talent was raising money for the new nation by giving speeches. So usually when you give speeches, you have to travel around to different places, just like, when Biden and Trump or Hillary trying to become president, they had to travel to all the major cities and states and give speeches. So she felt this was more important for the kids' future than her just staying with them and feeding them and making sure they went to school. She wanted to give them a future where they actually lived in a country they could call their own. So that's why she felt she gave them more by staying busy. After one visit to the United States, she even left the country, right? All the way to the US from Israel. That's far. After one visit to the United States, she came back with $50 million. Again, imagine that time. How do you raise that kind of money? I mean, it's amazing to raise 50 million now, but 30s, 40s, you're raising 50 million. Frequently described as being made of steel, another reoccurring theme about her. She could inspire such emotion that we always had to have our handkerchiefs ready, someone recalled, which means she could inspire such emotion that many people cried during her speeches. Obviously, tears of happiness or hope or having a future country of their own. She came close to going to pieces. That is an old term that I have not heard in a long time. It means to go crazy. She came close to going to pieces during the Holocaust, which is again when the Nazis were trying to exterminate all the Jews in Europe. Okay, when Jews were systematically murdered, same thing. In 1948, she cried, as did many others, when she was one of the signers of Israel's proclamation of independence. Remember how she talked about how emotional that was of her to sign that because it reminded her of growing up reading about the Declaration of Independence for the United States. Winning successive positions in the new government, so one position after the other, one higher than the last, giving her more power each time. Right. She had enormous influence over every area of Israeli life, from education and employment to housing, and even where the bathrooms were located, inside instead of outside. Guessing that in Israel before, all the bathrooms were outside, kind of very country style, so she moved them inside. At the time, Meir was elected Prime Minister of Israel in 1969. She had more than 45 years of political experience. 45 years before she became the prime minister. I guess it's similar to Biden. I understand Biden has been running for president for like 30 years and was in politics before then. So But again, that's why he's the oldest president we've ever had, right? So, but two people that I guess never gave up, right? Her advisors met her in her kitchen at night, sitting around her green Formica tile table. Chain smoking Chesterfields, which means one after the other. You probably were, a chain smoker is like a 1 to 2 pack a day, 20 cigarettes each pack, 40. You do too. Thumping the table for order when needed. Say you didn't have a mallet, which is like a hammer. She would get up every so often to make sandwiches or more tea and coffee. So even though she was the prime minister and had this power, she wanted to make sure, I guess, everybody agreed on certain things for the benefit of the Israeli people. But yet, on the breaks, she says, I'm gonna go make sandwiches, tea, and coffee. Now we'll start with the men first. Obviously, Joe Biden's not going to make sandwiches and tea for everyone on the break from their meetings with the presidential cabinet or other high-level people, and neither would Obama and neither would Trump. So now I think it's safe to say that I don't think Hillary would do that either. Hillary's not going to say, "Oh, hi, everyone." She's going to say, "You give me a sandwich, you bum." Right? But Golda Meir is different. She trained herself to function on 4 hours of sleep. That's really tough. Unless that comes to you naturally, she trained herself to just sleep 4 hours. That's insanity. To get thinking time, she sometimes scrubbed her floor in the middle of the night. Again, why we see the brush, the little painting there, because she would scrub the floor. I've known some people. I lived with a guy, and when he would get stressed out, I'm thinking, okay, is he going to drink or is he going to smoke? Very common things at the time. What's he going to do? He would start cleaning, dusting, sweeping, vacuuming. So I guess she was the same. She wanted to scrub floors to help take her anxiety away. She relaxed by watching TV with close friends. She would imitate American commercials and then laugh uncontrollably. Yeah, she said these things are ridiculous, these American commercials. Her home was full of African masks and statues. She traveled to Africa so often that many villages considered her their honorary queen. So I guess they liked her, and she had many good relations with many African countries. She usually wore sensible shoes. Again, no high heels, no pumps, no sexy sandals, and favored increasingly unstylish suits in black or gray. So a lot of times they call that kind of clothing neutral. Not flashy. She's not wearing a bright yellow or bright pink or a low cut top, right? Very, very conservative. She had 4 or 5 bodyguards and was more afraid of blindness than death. During times of danger, she would cover her eyes. That's very interesting. I think a lot of people are, more afraid of something than dying. People always say, oh, the dying is the absolute worst, but not necessarily, and depending on who the person is. So for her to be blind, she can't live that way. So death would be better. A lot of people too would rather die than to be burned severely in a fire. They're like, no, I just would rather die. Or I'm trying to think of the top ones I've seen in the statistics. Another one is, almost eaten by a shark and you survive. It's like, no, God, you should have died. Right. So there you go. So these are the sandwiches she made the political allies, coffee. Amid controversy over Israel's lack of preparation in the Yom Kippur War in 1973, she resigned. I guess she felt very responsible for this. How much was actually her responsibility? I'm not sure, but I'm sure it could be heavily debated. Her numerous health problems included cancer, which she kept secret for 12 years before she died at 80. So again, we have a lot of people now that right away they have to go to the internet and tell everybody what they're doing and what's going on in their life. At this time, people were much more secluded and respected their privacy and didn't want to publicize many, many things. You might not know it, but again, now everybody does any scandalous thing and TMZ wants it and everybody puts it out there. But up until, I guess, the 70s, Hollywood protected their movie stars, let's say. And, if they were caught in any kinds of scandals, they were protected, right? Which is different now. I don't know if some of the people would want to be protected. More stylish to be brought up in a scandal. You still stay popular. Okay, ever after. Reporters could never decide how to view Mayer. One minute they would ask her about nuclear weapons. Why does Israel have them? She always sought peace with her nation's neighbors, but insisted on Israel's right to defend himself or itself. So again, it's kind of like the old American saying, walk softly, don't bother anybody, but always carry a big stick because unfortunately, some people will bother you or try to hurt you. So she felt, I want peace with my neighbors, but I got these bombs just in case. This probably came from her upbringing when the Nazis came for the Jews and suddenly you're being attacked where the day before you were fine. It never left her the fear. And then would ask about our recipes. So people loved her cooking, and I guess she even cooked for the press. You know, again, is Britney Spears or Sofia Vergara, are they gonna make a cheese blintzes or chicken soup for the news people? Oh, I made this soup for you. I don't think so, right? Or Rihanna, not gonna do it. But this lady did. She liked to serve people. When she died, headlines around the world described her as Israel's uncrowned queen. Oh dear. Israel's strong man. You see that, not strong woman. And Israel's intrepid granny. It's a positive term. Very smart. Usually used for spies. As one of the most influential women of the 20th century, Mayer was a heroine to the women's movement in the 1970s. The early feminists who said, hey, look at this woman and what she's doing. She's a role model. A famous poster showed her taking the Israeli oath of office with, but can she type, as the ironic caption? Because again, the thinking of the day is women should be, the highest they should aspire to is being a secretary. Can this woman type? It's not even important. She's going to run the country, baby. She doesn't need to type. She's a powerful lady. Though Mayer felt that to be successful, a woman has to be much better at her job than a man, she was uncomfortable being a symbol. Again, her humility. She worked in a man's world, not to make a point, but because that's where nations were built. That was her thinking. So for her, I guess, again, you have women now, they just want to make a point. Because I'm a woman, you must, because I'm a woman. Her thinking was, I'm not here to make that point. I'm just, the most important thing for me is to improve the country's situation. That's it. The first time she saw the poster, Mayer merely remarked, you know, I never did learn to type. So she's being funny here, saying, well, I never did learn to type. But again, her destiny was not to be just a secretary, but to run a country, making her one of the most extraordinary women in history. Must respect that. Okay, we went through the reading. Here we go with the questions. What did Golda Meir once say was the explanation for her life? 2, which cause did Golda Meir dedicate herself to? 3, how did Golda believe that she offered her children more? 4, what happened in Israel in 1969? How many years of political experience did Golda have at that time, 1969? What was Golda afraid of more than death? Golda died. How did worldwide headlines describe her? 8, what was Golda a heroine to? Which movement? I think there's a misspelling there. It should be 1 O. But again, heroine is a female equivalent of hero for male. So which movement was she a hero to? Not a person. 9, to be successful, what did Golda think women should do? So again, I've only given you 9, not 10 questions, because we only have a few weeks until the final. So I'll take it a little easy on you. So again, as I see here, we've gone out of material. So let me wrap it up. Stop share. Back to the beginning. So enjoy, folks. I don't think there's any more rain headed for this weekend. Just there's going to be more heat. So just to try to stay cool. And again, this lesson is scheduled for Thursday, August the 24th. So take care, everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.